Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig, number 3 and number 4. The Great Bambino and the Iron Horse. They were the two most famous baseball players of the 1920s, forever entrenched together in the lineup card and history. But between them, there was bad blood. Though dominant on the field together, off the field, they didn't speak for half a decade to each other. And it was not just their body types that were different. Their personalities and beginnings were also dissimilar. One was a quiet Ivy League star from Manhattan. The other grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Baltimore, the son of a saloon keeper. Both men's lives ended young, with memorable goodbyes on the hallowed ground they played together on. One ended with a powerful speech, and the other with a famous photo. Join Baseball Heirlooms on a journey through pettiness and pinstripes with Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth's epic rivalry. But first, if you could please subscribe to this channel, that'd be great. Liking the video is also cool. I heard it helps, so that'd be much appreciated. Babe Ruth was never supposed to be a name everybody knew. Born George Herman Ruth in Baltimore, Maryland, Ruth was sent to a boarding school at age 7 because his father thought he was a bad kid. At St. Mary's Industrial School, Ruth became the best pitcher and hitter on the team. Secluded for most of his life, when he got out and started playing baseball professionally, Ruth acted like a kid, eating hot dogs like he was Joey Chestnut, and once going up and down an elevator just for fun. For his childhood wonder, he was given the nickname Babe, and it stuck. Lou Gehrig was born in Manhattan, the son of German immigrants. He was the only one of 4 children to survive infancy. Gehrig went to Columbia for college and studied engineering. Then, baseball scouts discovered him and he signed with a minor league team. When he arrived with the Yankees, he was a pinch hitter behind first baseman Wally Pipp. Babe Ruth was succeeding as a pitcher for the Boston Red Sox. He won 3 World Series for the team and established himself as one of the best pitchers in the American League. He was beloved by fans, but he was less beloved by teammates and Red Sox management, who would sometimes have to pick him up before games after a night on the town. One time, Ruth stayed in a house by a lake in Sudbury, Massachusetts on an off day. He got super drunk and threw a piano in the river by the house he was renting. After the 1918 season, Boston owner Harry Frazee famously traded Ruth for $125,000 to the Montgomery Biscuits. To the Akron Rubber Ducks. To the Albuquerque Isotopes. To the Binghamton Rumble Pony. To the Staten Island to the New York Yankees. Got it. And it was there where he would become a star. 2 great 90s pitchers, Tom Glavine and Greg Maddux, once said it best.
Chicks dig the long ball.
But before the long ball, there was the dead ball era, called such because the soul of the actual baseball would literally die before the game. No, it was because there were a lot of doubles and triples and not many home runs. After the Black Sox scandal, where a Jewish gangster rigged the 1919 World Series because he wanted to hit the Pat McAfee same-game parlay super boost on FanDuel, baseball's popularity was failing. Along came the Babe, now on the most popular team in the country, and converted to a hitter. Despite Ruth's work ethic, background, and body type, the Babe could mash. He hit 54 home runs in 1920, and the next closest hitter in the league hit 19. Lou Gehrig took the field for Wally Pipp on June 1st, 1925. He wouldn't miss a Yankee start for 15 years. Sports stars those days were bland. There was Walter Johnson, the Big Train, Christy Mathewson, the Christian Gentleman, Grover Cleveland Alexander, the guy I confused with the president, but he's a different guy, and he just got drunk a lot. But the Bambino had swagger. He had a childlike wonder within him, and it made him super appealing to the youth all across America. At a time when baseball was unchallenged as the premier national sport, Ruth was the biggest star they had ever had. To the point where if you ask someone right now, 100 years after he played, which sport Babe Ruth played in and what team he was on, most people would know. That case cannot be made for Lou Gehrig, who had an upper-class personality. He sometimes asked teammates to go to the opera with him, to which they said, "Bro, no." Despite being overshadowed, Gehrig admired Ruth at first. He once said one of his proudest moments of his career was shaking Ruth's hand after he hit his 60th home run in a season. Ruth and Gehrig traveled to Japan together as part of a tour which ultimately introduced baseball to the country. There are a bunch of promotional pictures of the two together, and they generally seem like good chums. Even though they're all staged, they seem like they're enjoying themselves. Ruth and Gehrig were the old school Kobe and Shaq. Because there are limited clips of Ruth and Gehrig together, let's just watch Kobe and Shaq highlights while I list stats. Between 1925 and 1934, Ruth and Gehrig combined hit 771 home runs for the Yankees. They won 3 World Series championships together, and their 1927 team, often called Murderers Row, is often considered one of the greatest teams of all time. Albeit, one of the greatest teams made up of a bunch of white guys with funny names, like Benny Bonahue, Johnny Grabowski, and Georgia Pipagrass. But like Kobe and Shaq, they had beef. And it's pretty hard to stem out exactly where it came from. The Gehrig Ruth drama is mired in a bunch of different accounts, but it mostly reads like an episode of The Bachelor. Babe Ruth had two wives, Helen and Claire. Lou Gehrig's wife, Eleanor, got along with Helen, but unfortunately Helen died and Ruth married a lady named Claire. Claire and Eleanor did not get along. One time, Lou Gehrig's mom said it was a shame that Claire, Ruth's new wife, doesn't dress her stepdaughter like she does her biological daughter, one of them being nicer than the other. The Babe heard about this comment and told Lou Gehrig that his mom should back off. Lou took offense to that, and they didn't talk for 7 years. People on The Bachelor probably have gotten upset for less, but it appears like a gross overreaction. But journalism in those days was very positive about players and didn't really go in depth as like a Jeter A-Rod story where every little spite was analyzed for about 10-20 years. So there was probably a lot more to this relationship. My theory is that there was more brewing with the spotlight battle. Like Kobe and Shaq, two egos found it difficult to coexist despite the success. Gehrig was always overshadowed. The day he hit 4 home runs, John McGraw, the famous Giants manager, retired. In the 1932 World Series, when Gehrig hit .529 and 3 home runs, it was Babe Ruth's called shot that was the top story. As the Babe was declining, Gehrig became the clear-cut best player in the Yankees. In 1934, Babe Ruth actually wanted to transition to managing the Yankees, but instead they hired Joe McCartney. Ruth ultimately went back to Boston, the Boston Braves, where he became a great trivia answer on the question, which team did Babe Ruth finish his career on? In one of his final games, Babe Ruth hit 3 home runs as a Brave at Forbes Field in Pittsburgh, numbers 712, 713, and 714 in his career. With that, the great Bambino retired with every standard home run and offensive hitting record in the books. His 60 home runs in a season stood for 40 years. His home run career record stood for 50, and he's still third all time. The Sultan of SWAT fundamentally transcended the game of baseball into the way it was played today. MLB saw how people dig the long ball and made adjustments with having more baseballs per game and prohibiting mucking the ball up to create a more home run friendly game. Ruth transcended popular culture, appearing in films, popularizing every product he put his name on, and getting his own candy bar. As he exited, he was the most famous man in America. Gehrig showed up every day for another 3 years. He won the MVP the year after Ruth retired and led the Yankees to 3 more World Series championships alongside young center fielder Joe DiMaggio. At spring training 1939, reporters observed that something with Gehrig was terribly wrong. He was tired, dragging his feet on long balls instead of resetting himself and jumping. His swing was slow. Lou Gehrig was only 35, and this dip was looking pretty dramatic. He saw a doctor who diagnosed him with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or ALS. Newspapers heard about this, and Gehrig took himself out of the lineup on April 30th, 1939. He said he was doing it for the good of the team. In total, he had played in 2,130 consecutive games, spanning 15 years, all of them for the New York Yankees. Lou Gehrig retired mid-season, and on July 4th, the Yankees held a Lou Gehrig celebration day, where they presented him with the trophy. Tens of thousands of people attended the ceremony, but the one who did that meant the most to Gehrig was Babe Ruth. The two hugged before Gehrig got up to the microphone, and they spoke for the first time in 7 years. When I was a kid, I used to watch MLB Network, and they would always play clips of this speech. With the echoing microphone and the drama on his face, it sounds epic, and it feels epic, but I didn't really know what it meant. But the more you look into it, the more inspiring this speech becomes. Lou Gehrig had been diagnosed with a degenerative brain disease. His death was a foregone conclusion and a tragedy. To the New York faithful in the crowd, he'd been a quiet hero for almost 20 years. And he's not sad or regretful in the face of this.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. That I might have been given a bad break, but I've got an awful lot to live for. Thank you.
Gehrig died 2 years later. He was 37 years old. The Babe went on, making TV appearances, promoting the U.S. war effort. He was diagnosed with cancer in 1948 and made his final appearance at Yankee Stadium that year. He It was there where a famous photo called the Babe Bows Out was taken. Most photographers were shooting the Babe's arrival onto the field for the ceremony from up front, but reporter Nat Fine wanted to get the Bambino from the back. The image evokes a figure mired in the shadow of what he's built. Without his aged face visible, we can see the glory years almost unfolding again, but his posture shows he's old and weary. The era of Ruth is over. He needs to use his great weapon, the bat, which he walloped 714 home runs with, as a cane. Bowing to the fans who created his legend and showcasing the stadium, which would become known as the house that Ruth built. Babe Ruth died 2 months later. His body would lay in state at Yankee Stadium, and 100,000 people went to pay respects. Babe Ruth's story also brought a myth that tortured Boston fans, that his trade from the Red Sox to the Yankees caused a curse where they would never win a World Series game. The slump lasted for 86 years, ending in 2004. As part of an attempted exorcism, many New England residents attempted to dig up the piano from the river in Sudbury that Ruth had thrown in on his off day, without success. Lou Gehrig's streak of 2,130 games was broken in September 1995 by Cal Ripken Jr. Major League Baseball celebrates Lou Gehrig Day every June 2nd, the first day that Gehrig started his streak, to raise awareness for ALS. At Yankee Stadium's Monument Park, the two numbers that were worn by Ruth and Gehrig lay together, number 3 and number 4.